I want to be honest with y'all. I don't know much about the law of Moses. And if I'm even more honest, I'm like, who really cares? I mean, it was for those people, and it was weird laws like, about cows and goats and all these things you had to do that were just like, well, I don't think that thing helps me believe in God. It actually helps me disbelieve in God. So I want to study the law with you. And when I think about the law, I think about a babysitter. And I haven't fleshed this out completely, but when I was asking God to help me think of a story or analogy to jump into the law, this is what came to mind. So maybe this is him helping me, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't help you. Maybe it confuses you, but let me flesh it out to see if it helps. The law of Moses is like a babysitter, in that the babysitter confirms the boundaries that God gives. And as they confirm the boundaries that God gives, the babies, the children that they're watching, they thrive. And then mom and dad return home. And that, to me, the returning home of mom and dad is Jesus. Well, mom and dad never left as mom and dad. Well, yes, mom and dad that never left as mom and dad were actually the image that you and I are created in. So it's an interesting, probably short analogy, and short meaning it falls short of explaining it perfectly, but that's the law of Moses during that time was given so that the people could thrive in that time, in that environment. So here's what Galatians chapter 3, verse 24 says about the law. So then, the law was our guardian until Christ came, in order that we might be justified by faith. So the law specifically, like I said, was a guardian, was that babysitter who's really just confirming the law and confirming what was already written on our hearts. And not that the law was written on our hearts, because remember, when Cain killed Abel, I think that's how it went. Abel killed Cain. I forget which brother killed who. The law wasn't around, so it really didn't. There wasn't sin. So the law brought sin into full view. But how was that a sin then? Well, it was opposite of what God did in Genesis 1. God created life. Human took life. That's opposite of God. So that's where the fault lies. But when the law came, it really brought to the surface sin. And I love that in this we have Jesus Christ, because in the Old Testament, the law of Moses was generally known as the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And in this, you have 600 plus laws and regulations. Can you imagine having to study, having to take time to really learn and apply all these laws in your life? Man, that'd be tough. And you see the beauty and the power of the timing of God. In a world full of distractions and entertainment today, we can barely memorize one verse, let alone studying and being indwelled in 600 plus laws and regulations. We can barely follow the law here and regulations of our government. I'm not speaking about myself. I'm speaking about you. You're the bad one. No, I'm just kidding. I've broken the law a couple times. Not in a bad way necessarily. As I was. Okay. And let me sum up the law this way. And I love how GotQuestions.org summed it up. The law of Moses is generally put into 3 different categories. The moral law, that's the 10 Commandments are part of this category, where it reflects God's holy, unchanging character. Secondly, civil law. So these laws, these grouping of laws reflect the day-to-day life of the Hebrews, marriage and divorce, sexual purity, etc. Lastly, you can categorize these in ceremonial laws. This is related to how the Israelites were supposed to worship God. And I love in this kind of short sentence of what the law of Moses is. And this is what the law of Moses is. The law of Moses was an earthly copy of an eternal, heavenly, unchanging standard of holiness. The law of Moses was an earthly copy of an eternal, heavenly, unchanging standard of holiness. Psalms chapter 119 verse 89 says this, your word is eternal. It stands firm in the heavens. So who cares about the law? Well, I do, and I hope you do too. And I love 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16. This is why I believe we should care. All scripture, everything, every single piece in this book is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Not just a little bit, but thoroughly equipped for every good work. So this is why we should study the law of Moses. This is why we should study the entirety of the Bible, the whole Bible. And I looked it up. Scholars generally agree with there's over 300 to 600 references in the New Testament about the Old Testament. So from that alone, we got to see the importance and value of the Old Testament. We can't just read the scripture that means the most to us. And what I want to do with you today and tomorrow and the coming days is take a deeper dive in the law of Moses. So I hope you join me. I hope you come alongside of me. And I hope this encourages you to go deeper into the law of Moses. But we're about to learn some things and learn how to apply it to our lives. Because everything that God tells us through Scripture is applicable to our lives. So I can't wait to dive into the law of Moses with you. See you next time.